What up again, everyone? Bunny here again. Today, want to get a good discussion going about riding gear. Everyone always likes to talk about riding gear. When they first get into riding, they always have a lot of questions about what kind of gear they should get. People ask me all the time if they think certain gear is more worth it than others. And, it's a very common theme. You see a lot of videos on it, a lot of Instagram posts, a lot of stuff in general, just kind of contradicting, bouncing back and forth. So today's topics are going to cover a bit about what riding gear is supposed to do and the reality of it, and then kind of the end point of what should you do. It's a lot of misinformation out there about the concept of riding gear. So the first point we'll cover is, what is the purpose of riding gear? The purpose of riding gear is pretty simple: to protect you in a crash. Now, that's a broad statement. A lot of people think that riding gear kind of make them impervious or give them some kind of infallibility to injury or death or something like that. And when it comes down to it, riding gear is basically there to save you surface level injury. Scrapes, bruises, cuts, lacerations, maybe a dislocation if it's the right kind of gear, but even then, that's still pretty it. And then on top of that, there's a lot of people that advertise as if gear is going to somehow save your life. And I should specify here that when I'm talking about gear, I don't just mean your helmet or your gloves or your boots or something like that. I mean all the extra stuff, the overpriced jackets, people riding on the street in tracksuits, the heavily armored pants that you see a lot of influencers get sponsored to pitch to you guys with their affiliate marketing programs. Like, all that kind of stuff is what I'm talking about here. And those pieces of gear, realistically, for the most part, are going to fall into two categories. And that's going to be something that it's up to you to decide if you're really going to actually derive any value from it. So let's jump into the second part of this. So the reality of riding gear. The reality of riding gear is pretty simple. It's not going to save your life if you're going above a certain speed. Now, once you're going above about 120, 100, depending where you're at, and you crash pretty seriously, either you're going to walk away with some really life-altering injuries, or you're going to be liquefied. And anything above that, for those of y'all that are really busting around, like, you're going to find that most of the crash statistics will show that people just die. I've sadly seen too many people, go meet their end in very, very disastrous ways because high-speed accidents, we're talking really high speed though. So a big part of why you won't see me in riding gear, like all track-suited out and things like that, is because the kind of riding that I like to do, which totally legal riding, by the way, just hypothetically, going 120 plus everywhere, 140, 180, 200, that kind of stuff, like, it's not going to save your life. It probably won't even save you from injury. There's just a certain threshold where gear just kind of becomes useless. And if you are going to be somebody that goes out and likes to just tear it up and go pretty wild, gear's really kind of just there for the looks at that point. You get the gear Nazis out there who are just like, I gotta have the latest, most expensive gear. This is the highest rating, skid protection, blah, 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 blah. And if you're just going for the aesthetic and all that, I mean, rock on. But, like, the amount of money that gear costs these days is pretty tough to justify something that, if your riding style is a high pace one, probably isn't going to do much for you. So a lot of the things that you see make people motivated to buy gear are some of these ads and stuff, which I wish I could find it right away off the here, but like you see these ads where like a guy falls, and most of you have probably seen it on Instagram at some point or something, but this guy like falls on the bike and he lays it down and just slides, and they just show like his shoes just evaporating and shredding into oblivion, and then like all of his skin just getting like ground off on the pavement, which, hey, that's it's gonna happen. Pavement is like sandpaper at a certain speed. But basically the fear mongering tactic that you see a lot of times, the marketing ploy I don't like. It's they're trying to kind of scare you into buying gear, which I'm not saying don't buy gear. My personal preference is simply I just don't care for it really. But the tactic, the marketing tactic is very direct and it's very strong, and they're very like, I don't know. It reminds me of those old drug ads where somebody smoked a joint and then they would jump out of a window. The scare tactics are real, but I don't think those are very realistic a lot of the times. And as people that are maybe just riding, starting to ride, or about to get a first bike and don't know what to get, like, some gear probably does benefit you in the beginning when you're at slower speeds. You're just not going to cross that threshold as fast, going into the high speed, kind of no coming back zone. But like, if you are somebody who rides slower, you see a lot of female riders out there, my biker females, and they are just decked out. They got every piece of gear you can imagine. They've got padding under padding with freaking slide gear on, like just everything. And a lot of girls are pretty lax. They have smaller bikes. They can't go as fast. And it helps for them. It makes sense, If they slide going down only at 40, 50, that gear's probably going to save them a lot of grief. They're probably not going to get as much road rash, stuff like that. They'll probably avoid some nasty cuts, things that would be on the road you might slide over, all that stuff. It'll probably benefit them realistically. But let's face it, most of you guys are total whack jobs who, if your mother knew what you were doing, would take your keys away from you and lock you in your room. But you're going to end up having to make a kind of choice at a certain point where, if my riding style dictates that it's going to be of use, then sure, go ahead and spend $600 on that Alpine Next Gen riding jacket, or those $400 NBT or whatever brand pants that you get that are armored up and stuff. By all means, I'm a strong believer in safety and risk mitigation, but I develop that more in my riding style than I do so much as post protection and stuff. So another major point that I'd like to make is, I'm a firm believer, after my 20 years of riding, that if you are comfortable, you're going to be a much safer rider. You're not going to be as restricted. When you're comfortable on the bike, when you feel good, when you feel loose and fluid, and you're able to just move freely and relax your body posture as you're riding, you are able to respond better. You're able to maneuver better. You're a little more connected to your environment. And once again, this is my personal preference. This is my personal stuff. This isn't backed by any data or anything. So, don't go screaming at me in the comments like, oh, he's just making stuff up. Like, I'm telling you that for a fact, this is my personal opinion. I think most riding gear is restrictive to the point where it makes you a little unsafe of a rider. Because when you are restricted by all that gear, or your movement is just stiff, and something happens, you're just not likely to respond as fast, or you have so much gear on, it kind of numbs you out to the feedback from the bike and everything else, I feel like. And that, to me, just makes me uncomfortable. It doesn't inspire the confident feel that when I throw a leg over the bike, that I feel like I'm readily just ready to react. And when I get into like a position where I'm like lane splitting faster, or I can tell they're about to pull out or anything like that, I'm usually so comfortable on the bike, I'm able to like react way ahead of time. And anything that does just kind of leap out, it doesn't even really faze me that much. It's just a power out of it, just turn real quick and give them enough room to do their whatever dumb shit they pulled out in front of you for. Like, these are all just things that, to me, have always made me feel more safe and comfortable on the bike. Now, once again, that's all my opinion. But I think that you're caught between a mix in the marketing schemes of these companies, because obviously they make gear, they want to sell that gear. So their motivation is for you to feel the need to buy that gear. And I think that if you're going to go for it, by all means, safety is great. But like, $1,000+ in a jacket and pants and all the other armor stuff, I just don't see it really justifying most people's actual experience, So having that said, it is your choice at the end. And when it comes down to your experience and your riding level, you should be doing what makes you comfortable. You should pick whatever gear makes you feel safer, something that makes you feel more comfortable on the bike, something that doesn't make you feel as if you're that little kid from the Christmas Story where he's got all that cold weather stuff and he can only walk like this. So at the end of the day, it's got to be your call. You got to be aware enough to know your limits. And if you're the type that is confident in your abilities, and you've got, your setup, your riding styles dialed in, and you're very capable of self-awareness and kind of self-diagnosing what your issues with the bike or riding styles or anything may be, then, maybe less gear is better for you. If you're a newbie, you're a little unconfident, you have a lot of hesitation, you're not hitting high speeds or anything, gear is probably a great answer for you. But as always, you do what makes you comfortable, because a comfortable rider is a safer rider. And that means everybody on the road is safer. So when you do consider it, don't feel like these salespeople at places and all of these other marketing retail people in the store trying to convince you that, you have to have that gear and you're such an idiot if you're not. Because they're just trying to get their sales too. So like, little self-reflection goes a long way. A closing remark, and something that I always stand by when it comes to riding safety, is two things. You never, ever, ever skip on a good helmet and good tires. Never skip on good tires. Those are two things that are uncompromisable. Your tires are the lifeline of your grip to the road. Cheap tires are going to be a bad experience and potentially dangerous. A cheap helmet, that could cost you your life if you go down and you're slow and the helmet's so low rated or so badly made that it just crushes like a soda can, and then you died anyway and you only crashed at 30, 40 miles an hour. Never go cheap on those two. Those are words to live by. Never go cheap on the helmet, never go cheap on the rubber. Other than that, I feel like pretty much everything else is very subjective to personal experience and preference. But if you remember anything from this video, never go cheap on these two items. Okay? I want my fam to be safe. I want y'all to be able to have fun. Come back and do it the next day, every time. So, with all that said, do a little research, maybe a little asking some other friends of yours, and by all means, go out and have fun. As always, let me know in the comments, subscribe, give your opinions. My other biker friends out there that are more experienced, if you made it to this part of the video, feel free to put your advice in the comments. I'd love when people exchange, and the veteran riders can help out the newbies more and give each other all the experience and information and wisdom that we all have so that everyone can come up together. Until the next one, Bunny out.